Jessica tightened her grip on the steering wheel as the sun slipped behind the jagged outline of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The last strands of light bled across the sky, leaving Silver Cliff Cemetery wrapped in an uneasy twilight. She told herself she had come here for research. Nothing more. An objective psychological study of why people claimed to see floating blue orbs above the graves. Rational explanations existed. She reminded herself, optical illusions, retinal fatigue, or the mind's hunger to create patterns in the dark. But as the road narrowed into a gravel path, Jessica felt her chest tighten. The cemetery appeared ahead, a field of uneven headstones and iron fences leaning like old teeth. The place seemed forgotten, yet alive in its stillness. Her headlights struck the wrought iron gate, rusted and heavy, bearing the weathered inscription, "Here." Silence is eternal. She wondered whether it was a warning or an observation. For a second, she thought she saw the letters shifting in the dim glow of her headlights, bending into something she couldn't quite read. When she blinked, the words were back to normal. Jessica parked, killed the engine, and sat for a moment with her notebook on her lap. The silence outside pressed against the glass. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the suffocating quiet that makes a person hear the blood in their ears. She adjusted her glasses, scribbled a note, and wrote, * perceived silence = amplification of internal bodily sounds, *. Writing gave her control, a fragile sense of safety. But even then, she couldn't ignore the heavy weight of the dark field outside. She felt like she was being observed not by a person, but by the ground itself. She pushed open the car door. The hinges groaned as though protesting. The cold air smelled of dry grass, dust, and something faintly metallic, like the taste of blood. A gust should have followed, but none came. Her breath fogged in front of her face, and for the first time, she noticed how strangely cold the air was compared to the town she had left only minutes before. That difference was illogical, she thought, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that the cemetery was manufacturing its own climate, its own private weather meant to slow her pulse and stiffen her resolve. She approached the gate, running her fingers along the corroded iron. Then, before she could touch the latch, the gate creaked inward on its own. The sound echoed unnaturally, as if amplified in the empty field. Jessica froze. Her rational mind fought to explain it. Wind, gravity, the shifting of old metal. Yet no breeze stirred the grass. The gate simply waited open, as if aware of her arrival. She felt her pulse leap in her throat. She wanted to step back, to get into her car and drive, but her body leaned forward instead, almost as if her bones were listening to a command her brain refused to hear. The thought unsettled her. What if the body obeyed things the mind could not perceive? Jessica drew a breath, lifted her chin, and whispered under her breath, "It's just physics." Her voice trembled, quivering like a violin string struck too hard. Notebook clutched to her chest, she stepped forward. The crunch of her boots on gravel sounded too loud, intruding upon the heavy stillness. She felt as though the cemetery itself had inhaled, holding its breath as she crossed the threshold. Her shadow stretched unnaturally long, distorted by the headlights still glowing behind her. She glanced back, and for a brief, impossible instant, her shadow didn't move when she did. She blinked, and it snapped back, aligned perfectly again. She wrote nothing about it, though her hand twitched toward her notebook. She tried to focus on her task, repeating clinical phrases in her head. Subjective perception, neurological misfire, environmental suggestion. Her professors would have been proud of her discipline, of her attempt to turn fear into data. Yet the words sounded mechanical now, as though borrowed from another mouth, not hers. Each step deeper into the graveyard seemed to peel away her rationality layer by layer. She imagined the ghost lights, if they existed, were already watching her, hovering just beyond the edge of her vision. The sensation wasn't just paranoia. It was sharper, more precise, as though something unseen was already documenting her movements, the way she documented the fears of her patients. The last rays of sunlight drained from the horizon. Stars began to pierce the dark sky, but the cemetery remained darker than the world around it, as if night itself had pooled here first. Jessica pressed her palm against her chest, feeling the frantic beat of her heart. She couldn't escape the impression that the invitation had already been extended long before she arrived, and that by stepping through the gate, She had accepted a contract she didn't understand. The silence swallowed her, and the cemetery seemed to lean closer, listening. The moment Jessica passed through the iron threshold, the air seemed to shift. It was not colder, not warmer, but altered, as though its weight had changed. Every breath carried grit, as if she were inhaling centuries pressed into the soil. Her boots clicked against the gravel path, a sound that should have comforted her, yet it only deepened her unease. The silence of the cemetery was not empty, it was attentive. She paused to write. Her notebook page read, Asterisk subject feels monitored. Auditory absence replaced by sensation of surveillance. Asterisk. The act of putting fear into words steadied her hand, but it did nothing to slow her breathing. She shut the notebook quickly, almost ashamed that the page itself might betray her thoughts to something unseen. The gate behind her groaned. Jessica turned sharply. The iron bars had begun to swing closed. No wind, no vibration. The hinges screamed as if in pain, and when the heavy metal finally met itself with a dull clang, the noise echoed in her chest. She rushed back, grabbed the bars, and pushed. They would not move. Rust crumbled beneath her palms. But the gate remained sealed. Her car sat just beyond, headlights dimming, looking impossibly far away. She told herself this was expected. Old structures warped. Yet her reasoning fractured when she realized she had not heard the lock click. The gate had not locked. It had closed like a mouth after a breath. She pressed her ear to the bars. Beyond them, silence. Not a cricket, not a whisper of wind. The world beyond the cemetery seemed gone, and she wondered if it had ever been there at all. Her pen trembled as she scribbled, Asterisk perceived entrapment. Hypothesis, self-suggestion enhanced by isolation. Asterisk, she underlined twice, forcing her mind to cling to rationality. She turned back to the rows of graves stretching into the shadowed landscape. Their arrangement struck her as deliberate but wrong, as though the stones imitated order while concealing another pattern she was not meant to see. Jessica walked deeper, past iron fences twisted into shapes resembling ribs. Some gravestones leaned, others cracked, their inscriptions half erased. A name, Maria Consuela, 1884, 1901 asterisk, caught her attention. The stone was clean, unnaturally so. Her fingers hovered above the surface but did not touch it. She felt heat radiating faintly, impossibly, as though the stone contained a slow-burning coal. When she blinked, the name blurred. For a heartbeat, it looked like her own. She pulled back, shaking her head. The air vibrated in her ears as if she stood beside a deep organ note. Her legs carried her forward, though part of her screamed to stop. She reached a crossroads where 4 paths split in different directions. In the weak starlight, the crossroads resembled an open wound. She tried to map it mentally, but her thoughts tangled. The notebook slipped from her fingers. She knelt to retrieve it. But the gravel beneath her knees felt softer, almost like damp flesh. She recoiled instantly, brushing dirt from her jeans. A metallic scraping slithered through the silence. Her head whipped toward it. The gate. She could see it in the distance now, but it was ajar, though she had heard no hinges move. Her car's headlights had gone out, leaving nothing but darkness beyond the opening. She blinked hard. The gate was closed again. Her heart knocked against her ribs. Yet she managed to write, asterisk possible visual distortion. Gate cannot simultaneously be open and closed. Memory unreliable? Asterisk. She forced herself to keep walking. Each step felt rehearsed, as though she had taken it before. Her mind replayed a phrase from a psychology lecture. Repetition compulsion, the tendency of trauma to repeat itself. Asterisk. The idea chilled her more than the air. What trauma could tie her to this cemetery she had supposedly never visited? As she moved farther in, a sensation spread across her skin. Not touch, not sound, but pressure, as though unseen eyes pressed against her flesh. She tried to ignore it, but her shadow lengthened again across the ground, even though the stars provided no light strong enough to cast it. This time she refused to look back. When she finally stopped, she realized she had circled back to the gate. It stood before her, massive and still, exactly as when she first entered. Her car glimmered faintly beyond, waiting. She almost wept with relief, but then noticed her footprints. They led not from the car to the gate, but from the gate toward the car, as though she had been walking in the wrong direction all along. Jessica closed her notebook, afraid to record what she saw. To acknowledge it would mean to believe it. She pressed her hand against the cold iron once more. The bars pulsed faintly beneath her palm, as though they carried a heartbeat. She pulled away, her breath uneven, and whispered, "It's only metal." But the cemetery had already stolen the meaning of her words, leaving her with only the echo. Jessica lingered at the gate until the chill soaked her palm. She steadied her breath. She was here to observe, not surrender. Yet the role felt reversed, as if she were the specimen beneath an invisible lens. Her notebook was both shield and confession. She walked among the graves. The stars were sharp, but their light seemed swallowed by the ground. A row of marble markers aligned like crooked teeth drew her on. Their surfaces shimmered faintly, though no rain had fallen. One stone held her. Its inscription was half erased, grooves hinting at words that refused to form. When she leaned in, a sound brushed her ear. Not wind, a murmur, syllables too soft to catch. She reached for explanation, water in cracks, the pulse in her head. Yet the murmur swelled when her fingertips touched the stone, as if answering. She jerked back. Silence, dense and deliberate. She touched again. The whispers returned, louder, still indistinct, a chorus just beyond comprehension. She wrote, "Auditory stimulus triggered by contact?" The stone shifted beneath her palm, not crumbling but turning like a body under a sheet. Jessica stumbled, dropping her pen. The whispering died, leaving a pressure behind her eyes. She crouched for the pen. The dirt was tacky on her skin. Her fingertips came up. Ink? No. The metallic tang betrayed it. Blood or something like it. She wiped her hand on her jeans, leaving narrow streaks that glistened faintly. She moved on. The ground sloped into a shallow bowl. Blue flickers appeared between graves. The orbs. They glowed like drowned lanterns, visible only at the edge of sight. When she turned, they vanished. Her notebook trembled. Blue luminosity observed. Peripheral only. No stable focus. Yet insects did not move like this. The lights pulsed in a breathing rhythm. She opened her eyes. The cemetery waited. At the center lay a broad stone slab, split like a scar. It bore a single deep groove, an unbroken circle that seemed to drink starlight. She knew it not from books, but from weeks of restless dreams. The whispers thickened, threading from stone to stone. Still alien, almost words. She wrote, "Asterisk escalation. Pattern without grammar. Asterisk." Then the orbs rose. Dozens lifted from the ground, hovering above the graves. Their glow washed her skin blue, casting shadows that bent the wrong way. One steadied inches from her face. Within it, she glimpsed herself, distorted, elongated, mouth forming a sound no air could carry. The orb brightened, then fell into silent sparks. The others pulsed in reply, as though something had been decided. Jessica staggered. The earth softened beneath her boots. Panic tightened her chest. "It's only suggestion," she whispered. But the orbs drew into narrowing arcs, sketching a diagram around her. Their hum thickened until it vibrated in her teeth. Her pen slipped. She bent to grab it, and the whispers surged. No longer vague or foreign, they braided into a single voice and spoke her name. Jessica. She froze. The orbs dimmed, waiting. The circle drank more light, becoming a small night within the night. A breeze rose from below, cool and breath-like, smelling of dust, old flowers, and iron. She wrote, "Asterisk name recognition event. Externalization of internal content." The orbs aligned along a path that had not existed moments before. Her skin prickled. The lights were not random. They were arranging her. She whispered, "Who are you?" The reply unfurled from everywhere at once, shaping the stones into mouths without opening them. "You." The word rippled the grass. She had taught patients to question identification with intrusive thoughts. Now the thought answered back. Something tapped her ankle, a child's marble glinting blue, rolling uphill toward the circle. It stopped at her boot and quivered, then cooled to glass. She picked it up. The marble reflected not her face, but a road lined with headstones and a figure at the end, skeletal in outline, holding her posture. She dropped it. It did not fall. It drifted into a light and burned away like fog. "Stop," she said, meaning her heartbeat and the lights. The orbs dimmed, and the stones whispered timings, breaths, footfalls, the pace of fear. She understood that the cemetery was not showing the dead, it was modeling her. The unreadable pattern was her outline traced again and again, a human diagram folded into the ground. She stepped back. The circle brightened. The orbs rose as one, then settled, forming a ring above the stone, an answer where a question should be. The hum ceased. In the quiet, her name came once more, not from outside, but from the place where decisions live. Jessica. Her hand lifted before she chose to move it. The pen wrote, "I am being read." She did not remember choosing to accept or refuse. The circle waited. The lights kept their distance like attentive pupils. Far behind her, the gate used the same old wind to remember how to close. At first it was subtle, a shimmer so faint Jessica thought it belonged to her weary eyes. She stood above the circle, notebook trembling, and waited for her vision to steady. Yet the shimmer did not fade. It grew, it thickened, it became light. The ground itself glowed, faint as a candle cupped in a hand. The groove carved into the stone filled with radiance, outlining the circle like molten silver. The glow pulsed, not steady but breathing. Each exhale of light seemed to carry weight, brushing her skin in cool waves. Jessica's breath caught. She whispered, "Luminescence, ground source." The words were automatic, a reflex of classification, though her voice quavered. The orbs that had lingered above the graves now lowered, orbiting the circle like attendants. They did not compete with the new light but bent to it, dimming as though in reverence. Jessica wrote, "Phenomenon designated as first light. Resembles ignition, non-thermal." Her hand shook so badly the words broke into scratches. The whispers in the stones changed with the glow. They no longer scattered in countless directions but bent toward the center, funneling into the radiance. The chant grew structured, rhythmical, like a ritual entering its second stage. Jessica closed her eyes. Behind her lids, the light was brighter, pricking sharp patterns across the dark. It mapped itself on her retinas like script, shapes, glyphs, none she could read, yet she felt them lodge in memory as if carved. She opened her eyes, gasping. The circle flared, lifting a column of brilliance. It reached upward without smoke, a pure rod of illumination. The surrounding gravestones caught its sheen, their surfaces glowing pale, their inscriptions briefly legible even where erosion had erased them. Names appeared and vanished. Jessica's own name flickered once across a stone, then dissolved. She clutched her notebook. Light reveals, selective memory recall. Projection? She looked again. The names shifted, never holding, like water rewriting itself. Yet each time she glimpsed them, she felt their weight, as if each bore a story known somewhere deep in her body. Faces she had counseled appeared in the shimmer. One smiled through tears, one raged in silence, one mirrored her own exhausted gaze. The column was not illumination. It was recollection made visible. Jessica stepped closer, unthinking. The fissure within the groove widened with her movement, as though encouraged. From it rose the first true beam, pale and sharp. Unlike the orbs, this light did not hover. It pierced, it carved the night. She reached toward it with a trembling hand. For an instant, her skin disappeared, bones etched clear through the glow. She saw her skeleton moving with impossible grace, as if it belonged to someone wiser. She staggered back. The orbs quivered. The whispers rose, no longer chant but expectation. The circle demanded witness. The first light was not content to exist. It required recognition. Her pen jerked against the page, scrawling, "Witness constitutes participation." She tried to stop, but the letters multiplied, repeating until the page filled. She tore the sheet away, but even the blank page beneath bore faint afterimages of the phrase, as though the light had burned it in. She looked down. The fissure widened further. From its center, a glow spilled upward in strands, weaving like fingers, reaching, not grasping, inviting. She recalled rituals where initiates stepped into drawn circles, where the first candle marked transformation. Yet here the candle was the earth itself. "Is this you?" she whispered. She did not know who the question addressed. The ground, the orbs, the memories reflected in light. The reply was silence shaped by brightness. The beam flared once and the gravestones shuddered, their surfaces catching fire without heat. Shadows bent away from the circle, elongating outward, forming a pattern like petals of a vast flower. She stood at its heart. The whispers became words again, one syllable breaking through, "Enter." The command was not loud but absolute, carried in the marrow of her bones. Her knees wavered. She almost stepped forward, almost surrendered to the glow. Instead, she pressed her notebook tight against her chest. The act felt like rebellion, yet the light did not diminish. It pulsed steadily, patient, infinite. Her tears welled. They caught the radiance and fell as prisms, scattering color across the circle. The ground responded, tiny sparks lifting where each tear struck, joining the column like offerings. She had not chosen to give, yet she was already giving. She scribbled one final line before her vision blurred. "The first light does not illuminate. It consumes and remembers." The page shone faintly even after she closed the book. The glow leaked through, marking her belongings as part of the ritual. Jessica clutched it tighter. Above her, the orbs dimmed in surrender. The night bent around the column. The first light endured. The first light still pulsed within the circle when Jessica realized she was no longer alone. It was not a sight, nor a movement at the edge of vision, but a pressure in the air, a knowledge pressed against her spine. Something stood behind her. She froze, breath shallow. The light in front dazzled her, but the true terror pooled in the darkness at her back. Slowly, sound crept in, a whisper. Not carried by wind, not by distance. It pressed close to her ear, intimate, like breath warming the skin. Yet there was no warmth, only the wordless vibration of presence. Jessica forced herself not to turn. Her mind spat theories, auditory hallucination, dissociation, sensory misfire. The rational voice was steady, but her body trembled. Her pen shook. She scribbled, "Whisper proximity, posterior source." Not external felt. The whisper did not resolve into language. It shifted. Syllables half-formed, as if the air rehearsed words it never spoke. Each pause made her shoulders tighten, waiting for a touch that never came. In the silence, she heard her own name, stretched thin. J.S. The sound came not from outside, but from the cavity of her skull. She dropped the notebook. The first light flared, casting longer shadows. One stretched wrong, while all others bent outward. The one behind leaned forward, reaching. Jessica's chest tightened. She dared a glance. At vision's edge, she caught a figure. Not solid, but density, as if the air congealed into suggestion. Tall, narrow, bent, watching. She turned violently, but the circle's glow blinded her. Nothing stood there, only graves, still, patient. Yet her pulse hammered, as though she had just faced someone breathing down her neck. She whispered, "Not real, just misfire." Even as she spoke, the reply brushed her ear, unmistakable. "Real enough." She staggered forward into the light, but the whisper followed. It clung to her steps, curling around ankles, brushing calves as if rising from the ground. Each sigh braided with memory. Her patients' voices, their despair, their secrets confessed in late sessions. Except the intonation was wrong. It was not her patience. It was as though the earth itself had listened, memorized, and now recited through her past. Her hands pressed to her ears, but the sound grew clearer when muffled. She could distinguish patterns, phrases broken and stitched together. "You did not save me. You left me waiting." You promised silence. Accusations, in voices she recognized but knew did not belong to the dead here. Unless they did. Unless this cemetery stored every echo ever spoken to her. Jessica sank to her knees at the circle's edge. The first light painted her skin silver. She muttered, "This is projection, this is mine." Yet the whisper corrected her, sharp in the bone. "Ours." For the first time, the syllable was complete. She shivered. The orbs overhead flickered. Her notebook lay open. Words had scrawled across the page without her hand. The whisper behind does not follow. It waits where you cannot look. She hadn't written it. She swore she hadn't. Yet the handwriting was hers. The script trembled as though still in motion. She closed the book, clutching it to her chest. She dared to look behind again. The graves were unchanged. Yet in the periphery, she sensed the same density. Taller now, patient. She spun full circle, nothing. Stillness. Only the first light burning upward. But when she closed her eyes, the presence was clear, standing inches from her, whispering without breath. Her tears blurred her sight. The whisper doubled until it seemed two mouths pressed to each ear. One crooned lullabies, the other hissed blame. Their harmony gnawed at her reason. She bit her lip until it bled, but even the taste of blood seemed borrowed. The ground quivered faintly under her knees. She could not tell if it was tremor or pulse. A memory returned. Her first patient, a boy who spoke of shadows that stood too near. She had written it off as fantasy. Now she wondered if he had only been the first to hear what lingered behind all people, waiting for recognition. Perhaps she had inherited his ghost by listening. Perhaps listening was the ritual. The whisper pressed closer, as though lips brushed her hairline. "You already belong." The words were steady. She felt them sink into her chest like weight. She shook her head, but the denial was hollow. For when she opened her notebook again, her hand traced letters without consent. "It is not behind me. I am behind it." She realized the horror. It was not behind her in space. It was behind her in time. Something that waited at the end of her memory, lurking in the moments she refused to revisit. The cemetery had given it voice. Now it would not leave. She whispered back, not sure if in defiance or surrender, "I hear you." The whisper smiled in her mind, a grin without face, and breathed a single word against her ear, a word she would never admit she already feared. Again. Jessica steadied herself at the circle's edge, notebook pressed against her chest, as though the paper and ink could shield her from what she had seen. The whisper had gone, yet its absence was not relief but pressure, like a weight pressing against her ribs. The night was too still. She stared at the first light, clinging to it as though focus alone could tether her sanity. It flickered once, then fractured. Where there had been one, now floated three. The orbs hovered in a triangle, their glow soft but undeniable. They pulsed faintly, each beat disturbingly close to the rhythm of her breath. She inhaled and they expanded. She exhaled and they contracted. Her body felt scripted, as if her lungs were strings being tugged. "Projection," she whispered, clinging to reason. But her pen moved without her will. Orbs mirror respiration. Observing. The word stabbed her. Not imitating, observing. She shifted her stance, and the orbs shifted too. She raised her hand, and the one to her right brightened. She let her shoulders drop, and the lowest dimmed. Perfect mimicry until she caught the pause. Their response lagged, deliberate, like thought. They were not shadows of her. They were choosing how to follow. A brittle laugh cracked out of her throat. It echoed off the gravestones, brittle and false. At once, all three orbs flickered in unison, answering. The sound of her laugh had been mirrored in light. She felt mocked, studied like an insect trapped beneath glass. The cemetery stirred. Grass bent toward them as if drawn to gravity only they emitted. Her shadow split into three, each stretching toward its own sphere. Each silhouette breathed with a rhythm out of sync with her body. Her sense of self fractured. Was she one of them or all of them at once? She shut her eyes tight, desperate for darkness. But behind her lids, three bright impressions spun in orbit, patient, refusing to leave. She turned her head left, then right, still, they remained. She opened her eyes with a jolt. They had moved closer. Their rhythm was not hers anymore. They pulsed in time with her heart. "Not mine," she whispered, yet her denial rang hollow. If not hers, then whose? Her pen scraped against the page in jagged lines. "They are learning." "From you." She dropped the notebook in shock. One orb hovered close enough that warmth radiated across her cheek. In its surface, she glimpsed herself, but older, pale, eyes hollow. A corpse. She stumbled backward, gagging. The orb dimmed as if sulking, its glow shrinking like a scolded child. Wind whipped across the cemetery, bending grass and rattling branches. The orbs floated untouched, unmoved. Her hair lashed her face. She brushed it aside with trembling fingers, and the nearest rippled. echoing the gesture. She froze. It was not reflection. It was rehearsal, a performance she was being pulled into. Soon she would not know who moved first. Her mind caught an image, infinite mirrors reflecting each other until form was lost in distortion. These were not mirrors but echoes, louder with each return. She wondered if she was watching the drafts of herself, versions rewritten until the original disappeared. Would she dissolve into them? Her pulse stuttered. The orbs quivered, then overpowered her rhythm. She tried to slow her breathing, but her chest betrayed her, sinking to their tempo. Terror struck. Her heart had been hijacked. The beat in her chest was no longer hers. One orb shuddered, splitting for a blink into two, then stitching together with a sharp snap. The sight made bile rise in her throat. Multiplication was not a possibility, but a certainty. How many by dawn? 9? A swarm? Each fragment carrying some piece of her until she was scattered, unrecognizable? Jessica hugged her notebook tightly. Her voice cracked as she begged, "What do you want?" The orbs slid inward, closing their triangular formation until they hovered before her sternum. The glow pressed heat into her ribs. Their pulse demanded obedience, and her body answered. Her vision swam. Tears blurred the orbs into streaks of light, yet she still felt them steady, merciless. Shadows of gravestones stretched like figures advancing. The air smelled of soil freshly turned, damp and raw, as though the graves themselves had opened to breathe. Pressure tingled at the back of her skull. An urge to kneel washed over her. The whisper returned, not single but 3 voices braided together. They spoke without words, a resonance that threaded into her bones. The meaning was clear. We are here. We are many. We are you. Jessica clawed at her temples, shaking, but the chorus only dug deeper. It sank into her pulse, her breath, her marrow. The horror shifted. It was no longer that the orbs watched her. It was that soon she would not know if she was the one watching or the one being watched. Soon she would not know which Jessica was real. Jessica's notebook lay where it had fallen, half sunk into damp grass, its pages fluttering with the restless wind. She crouched, hands trembling, and snatched it up like a lifeline. The leather cover felt colder than the air, as if it had been buried in the soil rather than resting upon it. She clutched it to her chest, whispering, "Anchor, you're my anchor." She dared to open it. Her breath hitched. Every line she had written, the observations of the lights, her frantic scribbles of fear, was gone. Replaced by one sentence repeated endlessly, "Don't leave us." The phrase ran down the page, uniform, relentless, as if printed by some invisible press. She turned the page again. "Don't leave us." Another page. The same. Each flip was more frantic than the last, until she fanned the notebook wide. No diagrams, no handwriting. Just the message, filling every sheet. Her stomach lurched. She clawed at the pages, convinced there had to be one scrap of herself hidden among them. But there was nothing. The notebook no longer belonged to her. It was theirs. The wind calmed. A hush spread across the cemetery, a silence with weight. Jessica felt unseen eyes fix on her. The words pulsed against her vision, their black ink shimmering, almost alive. She rubbed her eyes, but the text crawled across her skin like phantom veins. She saw the phrase imprinted on her palm, fading slowly, leaving her shivering. "No!" Her voice cracked. She pressed the notebook shut, held it tight, but the pressure only worsened. When she opened the cover again, hoping, praying for normalcy, the phrase shifted. It was not "don't leave us" anymore. Now it read, "Don't leave me." Singular. Her heart pounded. Singular. Who was me? The lights? The cemetery herself? The words blurred as tears welled in her eyes. She blinked, and the sentences rearranged themselves. The repetition bent into spirals until her own name emerged. Jessica. Over and over. "Jessica, don't leave me." Her throat closed. The notebook trembled in her grip, its weight heavier as if someone else's hand pressed against the back cover, writing alongside her. She flung it to the ground. The book landed open, pages fluttering. She should have looked away. She couldn't. The letters twisted, forming the outline of a handprint pressed into the paper, fingers stretched as if reaching out. The image pulsed, faintly three-dimensional. She staggered back, but the handprint expanded until it spanned across every page, larger than any human hand. Her breath rasped, shallow and ragged. She felt a phantom touch brush her shoulder, feather-light but undeniable. She whipped around. No one. When she looked back, the handprint was gone. The words returned merciless. "Don't leave us." Jessica fell to her knees. Her notebook had become a voice, a vessel. But whose? Her own memories twisted against her. Did she remember writing those words herself? She couldn't recall. Perhaps she had scrawled them in panic, blacking out. The thought coiled around her. Maybe she was the one pleading all along. She dared to touch the notebook again. Its cover was warm now, disturbingly warm, like skin. She pulled her hand back. The phrase shifted again. "Don't leave us, Jessica." The addition of her name made her chest tighten until breathing was painful. She whispered, "I don't belong to you." The ink darkened, letters thickening as though written in blood. The words grew larger, filling margins, pushing toward the edges, as if trying to crawl off the paper and into the world. "Don't leave us, don't leave us." The repetition blurred into a chant she could hear with her ears vibrating in her skull. It wasn't silent anymore. The notebook spoke. She slammed it shut, but the chant continued, muffled, seeping from the closed pages. She hurled it across the cemetery. It struck a headstone with a dull thud, yet the chant grew louder. Her knees buckled. She pressed her palms to her ears, but the words were inside her head now, woven into her thoughts. She couldn't stop them. "Don't leave us." The phrase matched her heartbeat. She gasped, realizing the chant dictated the rhythm of her pulse. She tried to slow her breath, but her chest obeyed the book instead. The notebook was her metronome, her heart its instrument. Jessica staggered forward, drawn toward where the notebook lay. She didn't want to pick it up, but her body betrayed her. Each step synchronized with the chant. Her hands stretched without command. She screamed at herself to stop, but her fingers closed around the cover. Silence fell instantly. She froze. The air was empty of sound, too empty. She lifted the cover one last time. The page was blank, a clean, untouched sheet of paper. Her relief lasted 1 second. Then a single line appeared, written in her own handwriting, though she had not moved her pen. "We never leave you." Her scream cracked the silence, scattering birds from the trees. The notebook snapped shut in her hands, heavy as stone. The cemetery was no longer a space of scattered stones. It had become a maze of faces. Jessica wandered among rows of granite markers, her hands brushing each surface as though touch could prove their solidity. She needed something real, something not shifting under the influence of those lights. But each stone resisted her touch, unnervingly smooth, as if polished fresh despite the years carved into them. She stopped at one taller monument, its surface slick with dew. The moonlight caught it, turning it into a pale mirror. Jessica leaned closer, desperate for her own face, a tether to herself. For a heartbeat, she saw what she expected. Her features, pale, drawn, eyes wide with fear. Then the image wavered as though ripples disturbed a pond. Her reflection aged in seconds. The skin sagged, lips thinned, hair dulled to white. She stumbled back, choking on air, but the reflection did not follow. It stayed pressed against the stone. Jessica's hands trembled. She wiped the stone, hoping moisture had played tricks. Yet the reflection deepened, hollowed, until it resembled a corpse. Her own body laid to rest, face sunken, lips blackened. She gasped, covering her mouth. The corpse mouth stretched into a smile. Her knees gave out, gravel biting into her skin as she fell. But she could not look away. The reflection leaned closer from within the stone, though the real surface remained flat. A hand pressed from the inside, fingers splayed against the granite. She raised her own hand in protest or surrender, and the corpse hand aligned with hers, fingertip to fingertip. The cold seeped through, not from the air, but from within her bones. She felt it crawling upward, anchoring her to the stone. She tried to tear her hand away, but her body resisted. Muscles stiffened as though compelled. The corpse version of her opened its mouth. No sound emerged, but her ears rang with static, the cemetery filled with it. Words buried within the static. Whispers of her name repeated by countless voices. She screamed, but the sound was devoured before it left her throat. Finally, she yanked her hand free. The stone was ordinary again, no reflection, no corpse. Just her own ragged breath and the raw sting of her palm. She staggered back, shaking her head, muttering, "Not real, not real." But when she turned to leave, every other stone reflected her face. Each showed variations: younger, older, decayed, eyeless. Some smiled with teeth too sharp, some wept dark tears. Dozens of her, lining the path, silent accusations. She spun, trying to escape, but the reflections multiplied. She was surrounded not by the dead, but by herself. Her chest constricted, vision tunneling. A question pressed against her thoughts. Were the graves mirrors or windows? Did the stones reflect her, or reveal versions of her already buried here? She reached for one, desperate to prove it false. The surface pulsed beneath her palm, warm as if a heartbeat thudded inside the stone. She recoiled. The reflection blinked independently of her, its lips moving. She strained to read them. The words formed clear and cold. "We remember." Jessica staggered back, colliding with another headstone. Its reflection mouthed the same phrase. "We remember." Her own memories buckled under the weight of it. What did they remember? Childhood visits, faces she couldn't place, nights she couldn't account for. The reflections began to chant without sound, lips moving in unison. "We remember, we remember." The rhythm pounded in her skull until she clutched her head and screamed. But the sound never returned to her ears. The cemetery swallowed her voice whole. She spun toward the gate, desperate to flee. The reflections followed, each turning as she did, like rows of silent onlookers, their eyes hollow, endless. One last glance into the nearest stone froze her in place. The reflection was no longer older, younger, or dead. It was her exact self, matching perfectly. And yet, it smiled while she sobbed. Her knees weakened. The identical reflection lifted its hand, pressing against the stone, inviting her. For a moment, she thought of surrendering, of stepping closer, letting the stone consume her. Anything to end the division between herself and the unending version staring back. But a gust of wind shattered the stillness. The moonlight shifted and every reflection vanished. The stones returned to lifeless granite. Jessica stood alone, trembling, her breath visible in the chill. She wiped her face, unsure if she was crying or if the stones had cried for her. The silence pressed harder than sound. She forced herself to move, but her legs were heavy, as if some part of her had been left behind in the reflections. She whispered into the emptiness, "What do you remember?" No answer came. Only the feeling that countless eyes still watched, waiting for her to believe the stone more than herself. Jessica pressed forward, though each step felt heavier, as if the earth pulled at her ankles with invisible chains. The cemetery hushed into a listening thing. Her breath seemed too loud, drowning the leaves. She told herself she was still in control, rational, trained to untangle trauma from imagination. But the air tasted metallic, and some old hinge inside her mind clicked open. A flicker. Too familiar. Not an orb this time, but a picture stamped into night. A child's hand slipping into an adult's. The smaller hand was hers. Short fingers, chewed nails, the thin scar on the knuckle from a bicycle fall. The recognition struck so hard her knees loosened. The vision steadied. She saw herself at 7 walking this same path, gravestones towering like watchmen. Beside the child was a woman. Jessica squinted for the face, but it smoked and blurred, as if someone had breathed across glass. The hand, though, was sure and warm. Jessica felt that warmth in her present palm, crossing the seam of years. "No," she whispered, "this isn't mine." Her parents had mocked superstition, kept her far from this Colorado town. Yet the memory rang truer than college or first love or the clean rooms where she cataloged other people's grief. This memory insisted itself. The girl paused, looking at something beyond Jessica's sight. The woman tugged the little hand onward. The girl smiled, small, knowing, like someone who already understood the ending. Nausea rose. "Why do you look so calm?" Jessica asked no one. Another flicker. The child before a gravestone. The letters swam, unreadable. The stone throbbed like a pulse. The little fingers traced the inscription. Jessica mirrored the gesture, touching nothing, and for an instant felt her own smaller hand inside her own. A sound rose, an off-key lullaby from the faceless woman. Jessica didn't know it and knew it completely. She covered her ears, the song kept playing inside her chest. Notes shook other images loose. A room she couldn't place, rose wallpaper peeled at the corners, a one-eyed doll, the weight of cool earth on her cheek, as if she had once lain down to listen beneath the ground. "Stop," she said, and the word fogged like breath before freezing. The lullaby shaped itself into meaning she recognized without hearing. "You are ours. You always were." The child turned, meeting her across time with an adult's patience. Jessica stumbled over a cracked stone. "Who are you? Who is she?" The question arrived too late. The film buckled, frames burned. The woman bent, whispering into the child's ear. The words reached Jessica like wind across a bottle, formed but impossible to hold. Cold poured through the cemetery. Pictures broke into shards. The girl running and laughing, the woman at the gate waving without a face, the same girl lying still beneath sifted dirt. "That's not me," Jessica said, and hated how weak it sounded. The sequence looped until memory, dream, and curse became one braid. Silence, night returned to its usual size. The stones stood plain, refusing visions. Yet in her marrow, she knew some version of her had walked here. Whether in body or sleep, she could not say. Knowing it at all scared her more than any voice. She fumbled for her notebook, frantic to pin the pieces before they scattered. She wrote fast and froze. Lines of childish handwriting crawled across the page before her pen touched it. "We remember." Over and over, wobbling letters that blotted and bled through. Ink slicked her fingers. She dropped the book as if it burned. Tears ran hot and unhelpful. "What do you remember?" The question barely lifted the air. No answer. Only a faint child's laugh skipping between stones like a flat pebble across black water. Each skip quieter, until there was nothing but the taste of metal and the thud of her heart, keeping time for memories she could neither claim nor refuse. She knelt to steady herself, grit grinding into her palms. Wind moved through the junipers, needles whispering like pages in a book she'd read and forgotten. She reached for something factual, a date, a name, and each time the memory flexed away, the way a dream hides when you wake. She thought of the cases she'd handled. False memories, misattributions, the mind splicing tapes. She could recite the cautions, but none of it helped with a lullaby under her ribs or a child wearing her scar. If this was construction, why did it have weather? Why did the night bend as if to make room? Across the path, a small angel statue hunched over a book. Moss ringed its eyes like bruises. "Tell me I'm making this up," she said, feeling foolish, briefly warmed by it. Then the angel's mouth looked a fraction wider, and she looked away. She searched for footprints and found none, only the shallow gouge of her heel. The child left nothing to weigh or measure. She wanted to blame the lights, call them a trigger, but the lights were witnesses, not the author. Jessica could no longer count the lights. What had begun as a single wandering spark, then multiplied into 3, now filled the cemetery with a choreography she could neither follow nor ignore. They circled her without touching, weaving like dancers trained to her heartbeat. At times they seemed small as fireflies, at others vast enough to drown the sky. Every breath she drew was echoed by a shimmer. Every blink was answered by a pulse of radiance. The world had adopted her tempo, or she had adopted its. Then, without warning, the orbs altered. Their flight slowed, spirals narrowing until all arcs pointed to one inevitable center. 3 curved toward 2, 2 curved toward 1, as though the entire night bent around a hidden axis. Jessica raised her arms against the glare, but her palms glowed already, veins lit from within. The convergence did not feel external. It felt like her body had volunteered. Stones brightened with fireless illumination, inscriptions sharpening as if rewritten by invisible hand. The orbs touched, no crack, no explosion, only a sigh. A single sphere hung before her, pulsing like a chest-drawing breath. Each contraction matched her pulse until she wondered if she was looking at her own heart, pulled outside the body, magnified and made merciless. She pressed trembling fingers to her sternum and felt absence, as though the beat inside had shifted to the air before her. Her notebook flipped open at her feet. Pages lifted as if inhaled. Graphite scrawled across a blank leaf in jagged lines. "I am." The pencil rolled aside, untouched. She reached out, but the word dissolved into the glow, absorbed like vapor. The orb swelled brighter, each throb tugging at her ribs, skull, and throat until her lungs adjusted their rhythm without permission. Breath after breath, she fell into its cadence. The ground quivered as though the soil itself inhaled. Graves exhaled frost. Grass leaned toward the light, bowing in reverence. Even her hair lifted, not from wind, but from a gravity too subtle to name. Far away, the iron gate clanged in time with the pulse, like a great bellows. Time itself unstitched, collapsing into beats. No seconds, no hours, only the slow, relentless drum of something larger. "Are you alive?" she whispered. The orb contracted sharply, as if listening. Within the glow, she glimpsed her own silhouette, doubled and blurred, arms raised though hers lay slack. The reflection smiled, not with lips, but with the entire field of light, a grimace of recognition. A whisper pressed against her ear. Not words, more like memory flexing. She shivered, unsure if the sound came from outside or her marrow. Her knees buckled. She felt pulled not by force, but by invitation, a gravity more persuasive than weight. Memories of arriving blurred into dream. Rational thought unraveled, replaced by a marrow-deep whisper, "Merge." She shook her head, hugging herself as if shape could be preserved. But the rhythm was patient, erasing defiance by repetition. "You cannot outbreathe your own heart," a bell told. Silvercliff had no church, yet the sound threaded through bone. Metallic taste spread across her tongue. Her vision whitened, but she dared not blink. She feared reopening her eyes from inside the orb. Still she lingered. If she stepped closer, would she dissolve into rhythm, her name etched into nothing? Or was the spectacle only a ritual to trick her into consent, proving choice where none existed? Her breath faltered, stuttered. The orb corrected her like a conductor tapping the stand. She gasped, then laughed. The sound cracked with terror. The laugh was swallowed instantly and returned as silence. She pressed her palms together, mouthing a prayer without words. The merged light leaned closer, and every stone trembled. Letters liquefied into unreadable glyphs, merging until only her name glowed at the center, burning without fire. She collapsed to her knees, breath thin, surrendering. The pulse slowed deliberately. Jessica realized what the light offered. Not death, but permanence. She would not vanish, she would recur. Awe, sharper than dread, rippled as the orb hovered before her lips, patient as a lover waiting for her final exhale. She resisted, holding breath until her chest ached. For a moment she felt victorious. Yet the orb only mirrored her stillness, shrinking to a pin, almost gone. Relief struck, then horror. In the dim shimmer, she saw her own body already prone across the G. Her lungs betrayed her. The exhale ripped free. The orb devoured it and bloomed. White erupted, drowning stones, gate, and notebook. Everything fused into one radiant beat. Beat! Beat! No distinction remained between her heart and its rhythm. Jessica, kneeling on trembling soil, knew she had crossed a line no waking could undo. Jessica stayed kneeling, chest rattling with the rhythm the orb had planted. The light was gone, yet its echo lived under her ribs like a second breath. She told herself, steady name contain. Her right foot slid forward without consent, as if the soil tugged. She yanked it back. Her left foot answered with a small shuffle toward the north fence. "Stop!" she said, and the word died a step from her mouth. Something had rethreaded her joints. The cadence that had claimed her heart began to draw the rest of her. Not as violence, but as tide. Grain by grain she moved. Between leaning markers, the ground sloped. Roots mapped the path. Air thickened with clay and a cold mineral tang. She knew what waited. A rectangle of cut earth, soil banked in tidy walls, shovel marks crisp. An open grave, calm as a bed turned down. She reached for a cross, an angel wing, any anchor. Her hands closed on air. Forward. An ugly shuffle that looked like consent and felt like theft. Behind her, the notebook lay face down. The only text left was written in bones. Light rose from below. Ashen radiance climbed the walls, bleaching shadow. It was the color of shells and old teeth. Jessica's eyes stung. Moths chose flame when no other direction remained. "Please," she said. At the lip, she expected the logic of falling. It did not come. She balanced there, toes over absence. A pendulum paused. The glow swelled, and with it the impression of fingers at her spine. Gentle, sure. Comfort arrived first, terror followed. She looked down. The bottom did not show dirt, but a flat surface like water that refused ripples. In it she saw her face, hair drifting like weeds. The reflection breathed with her breath, a half-beat late. She scowled. The face below smiled back, small and private. Her knees bent without her. The pull tightened like a belt. The reflected Jessica opened her arms. "No," Jessica said, and the word fractured. Thought thinned. She pressed her nails into her palms until crescents bled warm and real. Pain answered. Obedience remained. Her body leaned. Wind flattened. The world simplified to mouth and light. The hole widened in her perception, swallowing fence and sky until only depth remained. One pale instruction. She shut her eyes. The glow burned through her lids, making a dim cathedral of veins. The pull waited. A memory brushed her. Cool sheets. A hand smoothing hair. A tune with no words. She had told patience to count to 5, to anchor to breath, to outlast fear. She tried, 1, 2, 3, but her body listened to a different metronome. Had she ever seen this place by day, or only dreamed it and built a life around the aftertaste? Perhaps the lights had waited here before stones, listening for a name like hers. The ground felt patient. Patience was worse than malice. Patience did not stop. Her balance tipped. Gravity found courage. She inhaled, a last private act. Pressure grew at her shoulder blades, almost kind, promising the night would be easier if she yielded. Behind her lids, the reflection's eyes widened like lamps underwater. The pull asked without words. She almost answered. A beat struck once, twice, and cut. Silence arrived so complete it made its own sound. The pressure vanished. Her toes clung to the edge by habit alone. She realized she might fall only because nothing pushed anymore. She opened her eyes. The grave was gone. The ground lay flat, a rectangle of pale grass where her shadow trembled. Moonlight returned to ordinary. Stones stood stubborn and plain, as if they had traded magic for names. Her feet tingled with the ghost of the brink. Her calves ached as if she had stepped into air and been put back. Her heart tried a new rhythm, failed, tried again, 3 uneven beats, then caught. She pressed her palm to her chest. Warmth answered, hers, but braided with something older, like a drum half a mile away heard with the bones. She waited for a conductor who did not exist to lift a baton she could not see. No cue came. A moth knocked through the moonlight. Its small sound seemed indecent. She laughed once, too bright, and the laugh frightened her. Dirt ringed her nails, half moons of proof. It did not help. Far off, a gate creaked, though no wind moved. The sound traveled the rows like an instruction. Jessica took one step backward, purely hers, and then another. The pull did not protest. It settled into itself like a question that would wait when she turned. She did not look at the grass rectangle. She did not need to. The afterimage stood there anyway, patient as a promise. Only when the cold bit her teeth did she notice she was shivering. She told herself it was the night. The night did not answer. She listened for traffic, for any human noise to break the spell. Nothing came, only the slow articulation of roots and stones underfoot, the afterbeat of the vanished light. When she drew a deeper breath, it felt borrowed, signed with someone else's name. Jessica woke with her brow on the wheel, lungs scraping. 3:17 a.m. glowed on the dash, banal and merciful. The engine hummed, vinyl and gasoline. A panic bleed, she told herself, as if diagnosis were a key. Count 5 things, name a sound. Touch the handle, be here. Windshield. Trees, gravel, the shy edge of highway. Side mirrors, obedient dark. Rear view, wrong. In it, the cemetery gate stood open, dew bright on iron. She twisted to check the road, empty. Back to the mirror, the gate waited, as if the glass kept older news. Her pulse rose. She reached to tilt the mirror. The surface wrinkled like water. The engine's hum slipped a half tone toward the rhythm under her ribs. She killed the motor. Silence arranged itself. A white orb slid between the bars, then 2 more, then 1 again, bright enough to erase the frame. Light filled the cabin without heat, careful and absolute. She shoved the door and stepped into cold. Gravel answered her soul's, relief sparked and died. Where the car should be, the first row of stones stood, repeating down a corridor of moonlight. The open gate arched nearby, iron teeth wet. Its hinge spoke softly with no wind. She backed away and found the path placing her forward, green funnels shaping a route she could not refuse. Her notebook lay open on the track. Every page read the same, "Don't leave us." Ink swelled as she watched. "Hello?" she called. The air kept the word. Above, the merged light hovered, throwing no shadow, drawing time into a single beat. Her blood kept it. "Wake up," she said, and found no higher floor. The cemetery refused horizon, rows birthing rows. Turn right and the path turned right with her. Turn left and it complied. The place did not hold, it accommodated. She touched the dirt, cold rose like breath. Iron flavored the air, the rhythm inside her ribs smoothed, as if relieved to be home. The orb descended with a courtesy that frightened more than malice. In its skin, she saw herself laid over the stones, older by a decade she had not lived, eyes filled with pale. The reflection lifted its arms. Recognition arrived as a fit, not a shock. The awakening was a lowering. The car and clock had been props the place allowed so refusal could feel chosen. Light grazed her face. Behind her, the gate began to close. Metal answering metal like a sentence spoken. Darkness did not fall. Enclosure did. The night arranged itself into one room with a soil floor and a name carved early. Her heart adopted the other tempo, grateful for a conductor that did not explain. Her breath curved toward the light and vanished inside it. She tracked causation, training, rumor, pride, and saw choreography instead. The cemetery did not pursue. It rehearsed. She had entered on cue and was handed her line. Witness turned instrument, observer turned echo, Jessica rewritten as answer. The orb swelled nearer. Inscriptions softened, mouthing her name before swallowing it. Soil sighed, a bed turned down. Dirt ringed her nails like moons. "I won't," she said without spine. The rhythm listened to itself. She took one step that felt like hers, and the place accepted it, having counted it long ago. Sound thinned, even insects paused. The light hovered a hand's width from her brow and owned without touching. She understood how the mirror told truth and the windshield performed a lie. She searched for anger. Accuracy arrived instead. She tested the world with small rebellions, a shuffled half-turn, a held breath, a name whispered backward to break a spell. Each act was noticed and gently set back where it belonged, like a museum guard guiding a hand from glass without touching. Even her fear felt curated, displayed with a placard, specimen, nocturnal, migratory, returns to site of origin. The curation was intimate enough to be love, and exact enough to be ownership. The orb beat once. Names on the closest stones trembled into hers. Beat again. Cold traveled through her instead of around. A third beat and the latch clicked, too intimate for metal. The cadence ended. The claim remained. Somewhere a car idled, placed at the edge of attention like mercy. She did not turn. Turning would lengthen the path. One last ordinary thought flickered. Lamp, coffee, the habit of locks, and folded away like a coat. She lifted her head. The light inclined, the way a person does when you finally recognize them. Her body leaned without her signature. Nothing dragged. The place did not need force. It had time, it had her name. It had a rhythm that fit inside her and left no room for any other. Jessica drew breath, and the breath belonged to the cemetery. She let it go and the light received it. Shock clarified. The scene simplified. A gate that had never been elsewhere, a bed of earth prepared, a pale heart learning hers. The cemetery had never been behind her. It had always been inside. And now, beyond any mirror, it woke when she did and would not sleep.